We won't be covering the whole slideshow today, but we'll be covering part of it. And there will be a lot of information that will be on the slideshow that you might want to see, just that you might want to come back to later. Okay. So our plan for programming is the first week we'll have an introduction to the robotics programming and we'll learn about wiring. Then the next week we're going to have a Java crash course. And then the third week we're just going to teach about Java and what you'll need to know about Java. The third week we'll talk about how to program the teleop portion of your robot, which was what the driver controls, the driver control part of it. The fourth week we'll talk about autonomous programming, which is the part of it that runs automatically at the beginning of the round. The fifth week we'll talk about different sensors and how to program them and what they do for the robot, why you might use them. And the sixth week we'll do programming challenges and we'll start working on the robot if we have time.
Okay, so we have some basic rules for programming that we hope you follow, and some of these are more general as well. The first thing is teamwork. As programmers, you have to work as a team. You can't block yourself out from everybody else. The second one is mainly like, don't plagiarize too much. We encourage the use of Google, but don't get somebody else to code your project for you, right? The third one is respecting your teammates, the time, robots, and material. This is basically don't mess around and don't put anyone down. And the fourth rule is don't stay on task. That's basically it. The fifth rule is mainly for competitions. When you go to a competition, you're representing Westwood. So what you do at that competition represents how people will see us. So make sure you don't goof off or do anything that you wouldn't want people to see. Oh, and I've got a question. Yeah, so Nate just asked a question. If you don't understand some coding, can you look up some coding websites and look at them? Yeah, you can always ask people and you can always look things up. We have a resource page that is great. It can teach you a lot of different things about coding. So feel free to research anything. It's mainly don't get somebody else to code for you. That's mainly that rule. And it's an honor system as well. We don't know if you're getting somebody else to code for you.
Well, yeah, and Westwood is a school where we pride ourselves on our work ethic. So even if other teams, like if you know people on other teams who are like, we got our parents to code and our Auton doesn't work as well, you can take pride in your Auton knowing that it came from your keyboard and that you thought of everything there and that it's all your work.
Yeah, and our sixth rule is probably the most important rule that we have programming specific. It's don't use block code or Google Drive. In Westwood, we're going to teach you how to code, so it doesn't matter if you don't know how to code. If you don't know how to code FTC, you'll be starting with this at the same level as people who already know a little bit of Java. We're going over everything, so you don't need to use block code or something simpler. Google Drive is just bad for sharing code. We have GitHub to share code, so so that's just a main programming rule. And obviously, if you don't, comply with these rules, there will be some punishment, but nothing too serious unless you do something serious.
Yeah, like breaking rules 3 and 4 and 5 can be pretty serious. Like those can lead to actual punishments, but just try to just do your best. So today's lesson plan is we will have an introduction to the programming. We'll learn about some hardware parts and what you'll kind of need to know about that for coding. We'll go into more of that later. We're going to set up your computers and we're going to have a little discussion about the Discord and how it pertains to programming.
So what do we expect you to know about being a programmer? We expect you to know, everything about the code on your robot. You should be able to recognize the important parts of your code, what they do. Another thing is programmers will be responsible for wiring. Wiring is really important to your program. Depending on how you wire your robot, you could end up accidentally moving an elevator instead of your wheels. So it's really important, and we'll go more in depth on this later as well when we go into robot-specific programming. And the last thing is that programmers will be responsible for the programming blog. This is a part of outreach, and this will just help with recording your ideas on what you did, and things like that.
And last thing about this, you'll also kind of need to know about, like, if you program teleop, you'll need to know the movement stuff, so when the drivers are driving, they know which buttons to press to do certain things.
Yeah, that's good. Some of the hardware things that we're going to be covering are the kit, and when I use the word kit, I mean what your robot is going to do. You have to know, obviously, what your robot is going to do in order to program it. So that includes how your elevator is going to work, what speed your drivers want your elevator to be, what speed the drivers want your wheels to be at, how fast they want to go, whether they want to be able to toggle speed, whether they want, say, an intake of a ring to be very fast or more controlled. And depending on how you build your robot, these things will change. And so wheels, and we've been talking about this earlier, it's going to be Mechnum or your H drive or your tank drive or whatever you have. You're going to need to know how to program those wheels because they're a little bit different for each chassis. The next thing is sensors. We'll go more in depth on this in a few weeks. And basically sensors can include an odometer, which is used for Auton, and it counts how far your robot is going, and so you can measure how far your robot is going. There's also things like light sensors, there's distance sensors, and a lot of other things, and they're mainly used for autonomous. The next is motors in your expansion hub. Motors you've gone over, or you will go over in engineering. And your expansion hub is where all of your wires go into. So your expansion hub and your control hub are probably the most important things that you have on your robot for a programmer. And we'll teach you more about that when we go into robot-specific things.
The main thing about coding for the motors is that you choose when it moves forward or backwards, and that's going to determine the output. So the engineering puts together the mechanism, and then the programmer needs to know when the mechanism needs to move forward and when it needs to move backwards.
Yeah.
So here's some resources that we have. We have Google, which is just Google. When you have problems, a lot of your problems will be solved through Googling it and then clicking on the links that show up. Obviously, don't click on bad links to websites you don't recognize or that could be harmful to your computer. There's Game Manual Zero, which is a new source that's added this year, which has examples and has certain things for FTC in building CAD and in software. And this will just talk about, there's a tutorial in there on how to set up Mechnum, and there's some interesting things in there if you're working on something and you want to know if that's specifically, if there's something about that for you. GitHub is going to be where we're going to be sharing our code. So the teams will be pushing to GitHub and pulling from GitHub, which means this is where you'll send your code to an overall cloud where everybody's code is stored, and then you can collaborate and you can work together on different files and have it all come together there. There's Programming by Doing, which is it's a good website where we'll have some Java tutorials. It'll teach you different Java concepts, and we'll have some homework in Programming by Doing. There's some homework for tonight in there, which we'll go over at the end of this lesson. And then there's Stack Overflow, which is a Java forum where people post questions and then other people answer the questions. So if you have questions over something basic Java, then you might find your answer in Stack Overflow. And then there's the Java and FTC documentation. The FTC and Java documentation list all the classes, methods, and controls of the certain pieces. So when you go into there and you have something that you don't know what it does in your code, or you need to know if it will work, you can search it up, and then you click on it, and then there will be a lot of information there for you.
Yeah, and you'll learn more about these things as we go on. Something that Ishan has put in chat is Google is a programmer's best friend. You can always Google anything that you need. So just remember that. So for downloads, this is going to be our homework for today, and we will be using things that we download here on Monday. And so I'm going to share my screen real quick, Joshua.
You have the share up?
Yeah.
Go ahead and do something.
1 second. Okay, so tell me when you can see my screen. Is my screen sharing?
Yes, your screen sharing.
Okay. So 1.1 through 1.4 is going to be our homework for today, and we'll walk you through the downloading of these softwares. So first, you go to the FTC guidebook, you click software, and then you come to here. First thing you're going to download is Java and Java SE. And Java basically allows you to use Android Studios, and Android Studios is what you're going to be editing and downloading code on. So once you click this, you will go down here, and depending on what operating system you have, so if you're an Apple user, you have Mac OS, you go to Mac OS installer, download that. If you're using Linux, choose which Linux installer you want. And then if you're using a Windows computer, download the Windows installer. For Java, it's the same. You can, if most people will be downloading the Windows offline 64-bit, if you know that you have a 32-bit, you can download this just Windows offline. Both will work for Android Studios. If you have Mac or if you have Linux, I use these. So AJ asked, can we use REPL? So the problem that we're going to have with REPL is that we want to be able to share code. And if we didn't have to share code, we would use REPL. But Android Studios also allows us to push to our robot. So you need Android Studios to program your robot as well. So we need to use GitHub and Android Studio. So that's why we can't use REPL or any online IDE that's not from first. The next is Android Studios. So this is a PDF sent by first. And basically you can go to page 97 and there's a step-by-step guide for how you should download Android Studios. So you'll go here, you'll click this. But you'll, 1 second. You'll click on this link, and then you'll go to this page. You'll see this page, and then you'll click download, and then you'll go through the setup, and there are pictures as well as customizations that First has for you that you should use. The next thing you're going to be downloading is Git. Git is a program that lets you interact with GitHub, and it will give you the code for Android Studios. So depending on your OS, go to that. So I have Windows, I will go to Windows. Then I will download 64-bit, click download, and then I'll open this. and then I'll go through that. And so once you're done with downloading it, you can go here and then that'll be all you need to download. But for software homework tonight, you will see the slides, and then we also recommend that if you're interested in programming and you don't know Java, go through programming by doing 4 through 8, and then there's Coding Bat and then Coding Bat String 1, which is a great beginner course. And so that's all.